Good evening, YouTube. Someone gave me something recently to take a look at for them, and I wanted to share it with YouTube. So, found this in their garage, a Raven Arms P25. And if you're not familiar with these little guns, Raven and Jennings and Phoenix, there's about a half a dozen no-name companies that make these little 22, 25, occasionally 32 automatics, but they're always very, very small calibers, and they're always extremely heavy for caliber guns. They're straight blowback with real heavy slides, and I've handled, I would say probably this would be the 5th one I've handled in my life, a couple of Jennings, a couple of Ravens, and a Phoenix. And until this one, every one I've ever handled is a piece of junk. Okay? And I'm not saying this is anything great, but every one I've handled before today couldn't get through a magazine without jamming. I shot a box of 50 rounds of 25 automatic through this at the range and had absolutely no hang-ups. The only issue I had towards the end of the box, the last 2 magazines, when I went to chamber the first round out of the magazine, this thing would stop about right there, just out of battery, and I'd have to give it a little bump, and then it'd cycle the whole magazine. So it just wouldn't quite go. But I wanted to do 2 things. First of all, to talk about these guns and tell you that, in honesty, if you ever come across a Raven Arms or a Phoenix Arms or a Jennings, one of these really clunky 22, 25, these no-name, we used to call them pot metal guns, because the metal they're made out of is not anything you would want to make a gun out of, which is why they have to be so heavy, because the metal has to be so thick, and they're always very, very, very tiny calibers so that they can handle the recoil and not break apart. But anyway, and they tend to have like 12 or 13 pound trigger pulls, and this one is no exception. The trigger is horrendous on it. But with that said, if you can't afford anything else and you can get through a box of ammo without it jamming, you know, it is better than a sharp stick. So I'll say that about it. Now, with that said, I want to show you how to disassemble one of these things. Okay? So, and you'll know if you're getting one of these little pot metal guns, because they're all made the same way. Big, fat, chunky slide. I mean, you can just feel the heft in this gun. And it's always going to have this retaining ring in the back. Every one of these is going to have a retaining ring in the back. And the way you take it apart is real simple. This little thing here is spring-loaded, okay? And you're just going to push it forward, okay? You're just going to push it forward. And when you push this bad boy forward far enough, the whole slide will come up, if I can get it to do it. It's not going to do it because I'm on camera. Maybe I got to pull the trigger. I don't remember. I haven't taken one of these apart in a while. There it goes. I just can't do it because I'm on camera. Okay? So you just push it forward and pull it up, and out pops the retainer. Okay? So the way this little retainer works, this is what you can see from the back. And if I turn it sideways, you'll see it's got a little hook. This thing sits, and you'll see a spring there. This thing sits on that spring, and literally that little hook is what holds the slide on. You press that in, and it lets it unhook, and you pull the slide up, and then you go ahead and take that out, drop the spring and the retainer, and then you push this thing forward, and you're good to go. Well, I said you push this thing forward. It's not wanting to go forward. There it goes. You push it forward and you're good to go. You got a spring under the barrel. The barrel's fixed to the frame. This is all one piece. The spring in here, you can take that out and oil it up. And she found this in her garage and said she didn't know how long it had been there. She knows she's moved at least 3 houses. You know, so it's been there for a while, and you can see it's kind of dirty from where I shot it at the range. But it went bang every time. And so, anyway, I just wanted to show you how to take one of these apart. If you want to, you can take the grips off. It's just a simple Phillips screw, or a flathead screw. And they also always have a heel release. They'll always have a heel magazine release, because that's easier to do than a magazine release in the trigger guard. So anyway, that's what one looks like. That's how you take it apart. You can oil it up, you can clean it. I'm going to do that in just a minute with this gun. And then reassembly is pretty much the same way. You get the barrel and the slide lined up together. You go back over like this. You put your retainer spring back in the back, and then you put your retainer in. The hook has to face the rear. That has to hook backwards. So you'll put this in, just lift that up, put this in, and the fun part is you got to push that in far enough that the slide will snap down. And so the easiest way is just put a little downward pressure and just push down, and voila, she's hooked back on. These guns are really easy to disassemble. They're really easy to work. And like I said, on my Lyman trigger gauge, this thing comes in at about 12.5 pounds. 11.5 pounds on a good day. And on a bad day, it reads overload because it tops out at 12 pounds. But it's a real stout trigger. But this one is quite reliable. It only has one magazine. It's an aluminum magazine. And I'm going to clean it up for her and send it back to her and tell her that it works great. And if this is all you can afford and you make sure that it's reliable, then, you know, it beats a sharp stick. So if you have any questions about these guns or any other gun, I'd be glad to answer them. Let me know.